Get ready to embrace the ground game, Cougar fans. BYU offensive coordinator Aaron Roderick seems to have indicated that BYU's identity in 2025 is more of ground and pound versus the high-flying offenses of yesteryear.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer of the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 14-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider, your host here on this podcast, and as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about BYU's offensive identity in 2025, and if Aaron Roderick revealed it in a very short snippet from his media session on Friday. Then we're going to catch up with BYU offensive line coach TJ Woods. Had a great one-on-one conversation with him you'll hear ahead on today's podcast, and we'll finish up on the basketball front as CBS seems to be adding more fuel to the fire of the hype machine for BYU basketball. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download it today and get ready with the Game Time app. All right, let's start off today's show talking a little BYU football. Now, I was out at BYU football practice on Friday, and during Aaron Roderick's media session, he had a statement to a question that I posed to him, and I said, hey, how are you feeling about the progress of your offensive line? Because at that point, BYU was, I think it was 3 days into fall camp. They had finally put on shoulder pads for the very first time. So finally get to see a real look at what the interior play of the offensive and defensive lines really could and should look like. And he had an interesting response. So here you go. Here's what Aaron Roderick had to say about his offensive line. But more importantly, listen to the final statement he makes in this short clip.
Today was first day in pads, but we feel like we have depth there, and we should be able to run the ball.
That's why I said in the open of today's show, get ready to embrace the ground game, everybody, because it appears that Aaron Roderick believes that this offensive line, it's ready to really ground and pound opponents, and that in and of itself could lend itself to BYU being more successful with an unproven quarterback at the helm of this offense, at least in the early goings of this season. I still firmly believe it is a three-way battle, a true three-way battle between McKay Hillstead, Trayson Bourget, and Bear Bachmeier to see who will emerge as BYU starting quarterback this season. I think they can start whittling down those reps maybe towards the tail end of this week as you get deeper into training camp. But the best friend of an unproven quarterback is to have an elite or at least a very strong ground game that can take the pressure off them where they're not having to win games simply due to their arm capability and the ability to dice up opponents with your arm. The other thing about it is quarterback after quarterback that I have talked to in my career covering football will tell you that when you have a strong ground game, play action passing is in many respects the easiest way to attack opposing defenses because you suck them up with the run. All of a sudden you bomb it over the top on them, and it's as easy as shooting fish in a barrel, to use that expression. That's a tale as old as its time in football is if you have a strong ground game, it is a key differentiator for success, and it could be the key to success for BYU in 2025. Now, is the running game as sexy as the high-flying offenses that Lavelle Edwards and at times during Kalani Sitake's tenure at BYU they've put on the field? No, it's not, because then, quite frankly, it shortens games, it uglies them up, and it lends itself to much lower scoring affairs because, simply put, there's not as many offensive possessions. Aaron Roderick, during his time as BYU's offensive coordinator, has always endeavored to have a pretty down-the-line 50-50 split between the run and the pass. He wants to be as balanced as possible, and quite literally, I think every program outside of a handful really believe that. You could go look at eras past when you have guys like Mike Leach who are going to throw the ball 80% of the time, or if you look in this day and age at the service academies, Air Force, Army, Navy, where they run 80% of the time. But beyond that, the vast majority of college football programs, high-level programs, in fact, want to have a true 50-50 split. If BYU is not convinced that their quarterback play this year is going to lend itself to having that 50-50 split, they should lean more into that run game and go maybe a 60-40 disparity, even a 70-30 if it needs be, to make sure they have success. LJ Martin, Sione Moa, if Hinckley Rapati gets cleared in time, Jovesa Damuni, Enoch Nawahine, all of these running backs on BYU's roster, they got to be ready to go, and they've got to stay healthy. That is absolutely imperative to BYU having success on the ground, is to have high-level running backs running and available on the field at all times. The other side of it is BYU's offensive line, and Kalani Sitake said it himself last week. They believe they are at least 9 deep with starting caliber offensive linemen. If that is in fact true, BYU is going to need that offensive line to open seams in opposing defenses and allow LJ Martin, Sione Moa, and company to really run wild on opposing teams. If they can do that, that is going to make life much easier for whether it's McKay, Trayson, or Bear under center as the quarterback, knowing that you can turn around, hand it off, or at least turn to your side and hand it off to the running back, and know they're going to pick up 3, 4, 5 yards a pop. Man, it makes things a whole lot simpler as a quarterback if that is indeed the case. Was it a throwaway line from Aaron Roderick? I don't believe that for a second, because Aaron is a guy that I have known for many, many years now, and he is not a guy that minces words when he gets up in front of the media. He's pretty clear and pretty straightforward about what he expects from his offense, but also what he plans on doing with his offenses to hopefully have success. He has proven time and time again that he will run an effective quarterback battle. He's done it, 4 or 5 times already during his time at BYU, and that's just off the top of my head, thinking about the different quarterbacks quarterback battles he's conducted. Remember, he's had the likes of Zach versus Jaron, Jaron versus Baylor Romney. Just last year, he conducted one between Gary Bohannon and Jake Retzloff, and this year, it's a 3-way battle between Bourget, Hillstead, and Bachmeyer. I've got trust that Aaron will ultimately, and the team will ultimately decide on who the best quarterback of the bunch is and go with them. But he needs that offensive line. He needs his running backs. He needs them to shoulder a bigger portion of the load, especially early on the season, as you get whoever you pick at quarterback really comfortable in that spot. And the only way you do that is to have an effective ground game that can lend itself to getting victories on the road, but also making it easier on that quarterback to understand the concepts and not having so many high-level throws that they're required to make in any given game. So, interesting comment all the same, but I do think that A-Rod is given a little bit of insight as to what he expects, because I've said it before on this podcast, and I'll say it again. Coaches speak to their players via the media. You may think they're speaking to you as the fans. Sometimes they are, but more importantly, they're getting messages across to their players, because those players, they consume this media as well. And they understand when a coach says, hey, I believe we're going to be able to run the football. That's a message right across the front of the offensive line and to the running back saying, guys, get on your horse. Let's go to work. It's absolutely imperative BYU has a strong ground game, and that goes every single year in the Kalani Sitake tenure at BYU. When they've had a strong ground game, have had really good running backs, they've had some of the best offenses. I know that the passing numbers seem to overshadow that fact, but strong ground games lend themselves to successful football seasons, and BYU is going to need a very strong ground game this year with some unproven options that it feels like at the quarterback position. All right, coming up next, we're going to chat with a guy who his job is to get that offensive line doing what he expects them to do, and that is opening holes, protecting whoever's behind them at quarterback. He'll explain exactly what the mentality is from the offensive line. That's what he's shared with his offensive linemen about how to approach this quarterback battle and how to go about just being ready every single day for practice. TJ Woods, BYU offensive line coach and run game coordinator, joins me next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Now, if you're out on the golf course, my friends, sometimes you need that little extra boost to get you through whether you're playing 9, 18, or even 36 in a day. 5 Hour Energy, their transfusion flavor, can get you through that. And the best part is whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, it's a hole-in-one for your energy game. The best part is some days on the course or off it, you need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. And that is where our friends at 5 Hour Energy come into the mix. And the best part is golf is about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of the clubhouse go-to without chasing down the beverage cart. So that way you can have the extra boost, but also make sure you get through the rest of your day and get whatever you need to get done. So if you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, use the promo code LOCKEDONGOLF and get 20% off your order. Offers only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. And the code is not good on subscription orders either. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through and order the transfusion flavored 5 Hour Energy and do it today. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you who have been subscribing, rating, reviewing, sharing the show with your family and friends. It goes a long way to continue to build this audience. And we're heading into the really fun part of the year. That's football. And then shortly after that, basketball season. It is my favorite time of the year, and excited for many more of you to be joining us on this and being an everydayer with us right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, time now to let you we're going to catch up with BYU offensive line coach TJ Woods. I had a great chat with him on Friday afternoon, shortly after BYU finished up practice. I had a great conversation about what he expects from this offensive line. He's having to revamp it a little bit because he's got two new offensive tackles. Isaiah Jada, it appears, at left tackle, Andrew Gentry at right tackle. Bruce Mitchell's in the mix at center. What does he make of this offensive line? What does he expect of them? And more importantly, what does he think they need to do to make sure that they're a key part? And as the former BYU offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes said, to be the tip of the spear for the BYU football program. All questions that were addressed. And you're also going to hear a little shout out right at the tail end from Coach Woods. And we'll get to all that right now, right here on Locked On Cougars.
What's it been like so far in camp to integrate new guys, but also some young guys as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's part of the process. That's part of college football. You lose good players and you got to replace them. And we lost three really good players. I mean, we lost three really good leaders too. All three of those guys in their own way added a lot to the group, right? And so. We've been in this process now for a while, through spring, through summer. Summer is a gigantic time for offensive line to be able to gel and come together and really sharpen their sword. And so they've been doing a good job there. The positive for us is we've had the guys since spring, even though Gentry wasn't playing in spring, but still here, still around, building that continuity and that camaraderie that you need to play the position.
Speaking of Gentry, there was some initial concern he may be out for some time. Has he come back in an earlier period than you expected, or has he been kind of the timeline?
He's been on schedule.
Okay.
Yeah, he's been on schedule, and he was actually a little bit ahead of schedule. We made sure that we just were careful with what we were doing there, and happy to have him back. He's a huge addition.
We heard A-Rod say that he expects Jada to be the left tackle and Andrew to be the right tackle. What separates guys and their comfort level and why they fit at one side versus the other?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing is you're protecting the quarterback's blind side on the left side. Now, some of that might be a little bit overplayed in my opinion, but I still think there's a level of being a little bit more agile, maybe a little quicker, and then the right tackle can be maybe somebody that you run behind a little bit, and that's kind of how we've built things in the past. But at the end of the day, we're going to play the best five guys, and right now those two guys are running with the ones. I think we have a lot of competition at a lot of spots. One thing I can guarantee is everything is going to be earned out here. Every single thing. Everybody's job is on the line every single day, and that's how they have to approach it, and they do a good job of that. But the reason why is because competition makes everybody better, and we got a lot of that right now. We got a lot of guys playing, I think, competitive football.
Looking at the guys you've recruited, particularly the tackle, they're all tall. Like Gentry's 6'8", Kime, and who else do you have? 6'9". Like, yep. Is there a reason why you want tall, rangy dudes at tackle?
Yeah, I mean, it's a game of leverage.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's your arm length is important, and how long you can play on the edge, how much space you can take up, how much harder it is to get around you the longer you are. Those type of things play a factor. And the other thing is BYU's always been big. I mean, there's every guy that comes out to practice since I played here in, 19 whatever it was, or 2000. I'm all looking up at every one of them. So I think that's part of just naturally how BYU, people that are attracted to BYU, or however it works out. But to me, we're fortunate to have that length. I've coached a lot of places where we were begging for guys that look like that.
Jada kind of bucks that trend a little bit because he's a little bit shorter, but what sets him apart with his ability, even though he may be a little bit shorter stature-wise?
Yeah, I mean, Jada at BYU is a little shorter. Yeah. Jada at every other program in our league is tall.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still a big guy, but I think, his strength is his agility, his quickness, super sharp, very cerebral football player. But yeah, those are kind of his strengths.
It's not very often you bring a guy in like you did with him last year, and he's a senior eligibility-wise, but you redshirted him.
Yeah.
What was the mindset behind that?
Well, I mean, we kind of looked, number one, at his development and what he needed, what we thought he needed. He was a guy that I felt needed a little bit more time to marinate, to be in the weight room. And, Coach Phyllis and his guys, man, shout out to those guys. They've done a tremendous job with all the offensive linemen. But, Jada's gotten stronger. He's developed that way. And so that was kind of our mindset. Like, if we were able to, we wanted to try to give him that opportunity. Now, if we had injuries at that position, then that would have changed things. But luckily, we were blessed with some health at that spot.
Bruce Mitchell is one of my favorite stories. Moves from defensive line and emerges as a guy who's a starting caliber offensive lineman. How has he improved this offseason going into this year at center?
Yeah, I think Bruce was a D lineman playing center
Okay.
a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And that, I don't want to make it sound like it's a knock on Bruce, because Bruce did an incredible job. But, what allowed Bruce to have his success last year was much more what was between his ears and how big his heart was and some of those type of things. And it's just his natural ability. I mean, he's a really good athlete, very strong, very quick, very smart, all of those things. This year, now he's had a chance to really invest in the technique and gain the muscle memory and the repetition that it takes. And so now I think he's becoming more of a complete offensive lineman.
You got some competition with those guard spots. I know that Waylon's probably going to lock down that left side as he usually does, but yeah, it's Fortune, the kid you brought in from Southern Utah, another Southern Utah guy in Leusa. How are you going to balance all this out?
Yeah, I mean, they're making my job hard, and that's what I tell them every day. That's a good thing, And right now, between Waylon, Sonny, Leusa, and Saforchuk, man, all four of those guys are battling, and they're doing some really, really good stuff out here. So look forward to that competition and to see how that kind of shapes up here through camp.
When you're offensive coordinator, and we ask them this question, like, what do you make your offensive sense? I think we're going to be able to run the football. Do you like hearing that?
Yeah, love that. Yeah, I mean, I think naturally as an offensive lineman, you feel like you have a little bit more control of the game when you're running the ball, and you can be a little bit more aggressive, more violent, right? Even though pass protection's not passive, you're still backing up, where in the run game you can come off the ball and do some of those things. So I think every lineman likes to get a little bit nasty and run the football, and we got good runners, and to me, football's pretty simple. You give the ball to your best players, and we got good players in our backfield, and look for them to really have breakout seasons, and we have multiple guys, so we're excited about it.
It's pretty highly publicized. You got a quarterback battle going on. What is your message to your offensive line, no matter who's back there? What have you told them about it?
I think for us, we have to be consistent so that they can do their job, and it's never been more important for us than it is right now to be able to do that. Not only so that they can execute and do their job, but also so that we can, as a staff, can evaluate them and figure out who the best one is, right? And so, a lot of times you need the offensive line to play well at quarterback, and you need the offensive line to play well at running back. You need that's so for us, like, that's been our main goal really this entire offseason, is just being consistent, being more steady up front. I think that as I look back last year, we did a lot of really good things, and it's not a knock on that group at all, but I think they did a lot of good things, and I think we have to try to challenge ourselves to do a lot of great things this year, right? We need to go from good to great, and that's been our mindset, and I'm pleased with where we're at right now.
I've heard that from some people, the good to great mentality, because you guys were, let's be honest, so close to making the Big 12 title game appearance a year ago. What's it going to take in your mind to take that next step and go from good to great?
Yeah, I think just consistency. I think we have really good players. I think we're deep enough. We can overcome injuries, those type of things. I think for us, it's going to be in the same group all the time, week in and week out. Like, we have a quote in our room. We say the environment changes, we don't. And that's really been my main focus and our main message to the line this year.
Coach, thanks for the time.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate your podcast, man. You do a heck of a job.
Well, okay,
appreciate you, brother.
With this. You have family that watches.
Oh yeah, shout out to my mom,
Okay.
Miss Debbie Woods. Shout out. There she is.
Thanks, Coach.
Yeah.
Big thank you to Coach Woods, and more importantly, big thank you to his mother for watching this podcast. She is a true everydayer on this podcast, and hey, I always love it when we got people like that are consuming this content. But hey, that goes to the thousands of you who tune into this every single day. Cannot thank you enough. And more importantly, big thank you to Coach Woods for taking the time to sit down with me. And I thought it was very interesting to hear him talk about the mindset he wants his offensive line to have and the mindset he has. They're not seeing an inch, and I can respect that. They understand how close they were a season ago, and there's no reason to give ground when you don't need to. And it'll be important for his offensive line, as revamped as it is and having some new faces along it, to perform as good, if not better, than they did a season ago. And you could hear that with some of the comments he was making there. But once again, a big thank you to Coach Woods and BYU Sports Information. Coming up next, we're going to finish up today's show talking a little BYU basketball. CBS Sports has put together a little bit of a look at what the roster, the way they think it's constructed for BYU under Kevin Young, and ultimately what they think BYU can accomplish this season. And really all it does is add more fuel to the machine when it comes to the hype for BYU basketball. And is that a bad thing? We'll get to that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Now, if you've been online trying to get tickets for a concert you've been meaning to go to for literally sometimes months, if not years, and all of a sudden you lose your spot in line for whatever reason, that is about as big of a bummer as there is, but that is where our friends at Game Time come in. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. They make getting your concert tickets faster and easier than ever. And the best part is prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime. And you can save up to 60% off with killer last minute deals from our friends over at Game Time. If you're tired of endless scrolling, trying to find the best deal, Game Time zone deals, pick the best seat in the section for you. And beyond that, worried about what happens if plans change, the Game Time guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and more along the way. So take the guesswork out of buying your concert tickets and do it with our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account, redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, and of course, it's all guaranteed. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not signed up for the Locked On Cougars Insider Group, what are you waiting for? Get the inside scoop on all things BYU sports that I am hearing and passing along to you guys. And the best part about it all, it comes right to your phone in the form of a text message. So join us today. Link is in the show notes below, or reach out to us via social media or email, and we'll get you squared away. You get 14 days of a free trial, and it's just $5 a month after that to be a member of the Insiders Group and get the insider intel that you crave. So join us today on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right, time now to talk a little BYU hoops before we go on today's show. And over at CBSSports.com, they're doing a series, it appears, on each of the top teams in college basketball. So they call it BYU Basketball Roster Breakdown and Starting Lineup Projection. And they say this: a new era starts with the arrival of AJ DeBonsa. And it's a well put together piece from Cameron Salerno. And he says this: it's safe to say that entering the 2025-26 season, there's never been and may never be more hype surrounding the BYU program than there will be this season. Okay, I can respect that, because you think about it, the type of talent that Kevin Young has brought in, and more importantly, having a guy like AJ DeBonsa on campus, it only heightens what BYU fans are expecting. We saw a season ticket sell out in record time last week, and for good reason. The hype train around this BYU basketball team, it's unlike anything I have seen in quite some time. It's crazy to think about this, but as they point out here, it says AJ DeBonsa is a top contender alongside Duke's Cameron Boozer and Kansas's Darren Peterson, be the number one pick next summer. For the first time since 2004, they screwed this up. They say Babby Arujo. That'd be Hafa Arujo. It's supposed to be an AI thing or something, but BYU produced a top 10 pick last year, and Jaeger Dielman, who that's how he's have his name pronounced now in the NBA, who was Young's first prize recruit, was selected with the number 8 overall selection in June's draft. He says there is a chance that AJ DeBonsa could pass Sean Bradley, who was selected number 2 overall as the highest drafted player in school history. But then he adds this: with the college basketball players movement all but done, it's time to start breaking down the rosters of these programs, and that's where they're looking at BYU. And they project BYU starting lineup to be what we think we all expect. Robert Wright III is your point guard. Then they project Kennard Davis Jr. coming in to kind of be that defensive stopper. Think of him as the Mwit Mag of this year's team, albeit with more size, because Kennard Davis Jr. at 6'6", 215. He's an absolute bowling ball, but has got the defensive chops from everything that we're hearing to be that type of player. He projects that both AJ DeBonson and Richie Saunders are your 3 and 4 starters on the wings for BYU. And then they've got Keba as your number 5. Now, that seems like a pretty solid starting 5. They also add in the bench players, Nate Pickens, Dawson Baker, Tyler Miras, Mihailo Bošković, Dominique Diomande, and you got guys like Xavier Staten in the mix, as well as some other players coming in that are going to be expected to essentially fill spot duty roles. That, and more importantly than anything else under Kevin Young, is to come in, play good defense, and hit threes. That's what BYU is really building, is they're building an offensive identity that it's NBA-esque. Shooting at beyond the arc from the three-point line or getting to the rim. That's kind of the whole thing. The mid-range game in BYU, it's not a thing anymore. At least at this juncture, it's not a thing. They also say this about BYU, that they are tied with Louisville, Texas Tech, and Kansas at 20-1 odds to win the 2026 NCAA tournament. Purdue is currently the favorite at 9-1 odds, followed by Houston, Duke, Florida, Kentucky, UConn, Michigan, and St. John's. So BYU's down the list a little bit, but it also adds this. It's not surprising that BYU is favorable odds to win the national title because from a pure talent perspective, BYU ranks above most teams in that department. That's the biggest thing for BYU this season with Kevin Young is the talent. The talent alone, AJ DeBonsa, the Robert Wrights, the Richie Saunders, that talent is going to have to elevate this BYU squad. And if it comes to fruition, there's no reason to think that BYU can't be in the mix. Salerno writes here that my prediction for BYU is that at minimum, they will be a team that reaches the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. Well, that's what AJ DeBonsa says that BYU's minimum is. He says the ceiling for this team, depending on how DeBonsa plays, is clear. BYU will be a very popular Final Four pick and should challenge Houston for the Big 12 regular and conference titles. If all goes well, BYU could be playing for the right to play for a national title during the last weekend of the college basketball season next spring. That's kind of more fuel, as I said, to the fire for this BYU team. They have got to go out there, and they're going to have to, I think, in some ways, tamp down some of these expectations because it's not going to come together right away. And they have scheduled a pretty audacious non-conference slate. You think about the types of opponents they're going to face, the UConns, Clemson up there in New York City. You're playing in a MTE in Orlando, Florida. You're traveling clear across the country. It's not going to be easy for BYU to fly under the radar because of the high-profile nature of their schedule. And then you add in the fact you're playing in the Big 12, which is at worst one of the top 2 basketball leagues in all of college basketball. This is going to be an interesting season to see how Kevin Young and company kind of both balance the expectations heaped upon this team, but also embrace them along the way. I don't think that AJ DeBonsa is going to get up at any point this coming season and say, guys, everything you're saying about me being a potential number 1 overall pick, me being a potential player of the year, a Wooden Award type player, I don't want that. Stop talking about it. I think that AJ, in his heart of hearts, he wants to embrace every part of it because he's been pretty outspoken on what his expectations are for what is expected to be just one season in Provo, Utah. And I can respect it. He's embraced everything that BYU is, even if he's going to be here a short time. His family, his father in particular, Ace, they've been very, very upfront about that they've enjoyed what Kevin Young and company have been telling them about BYU, everything that they were told about, everything that it's been so far. And now coming up in, they're going through another 2 weeks of workouts here before school starts. And then we'll see what happens. Because then once you get to November and you're tipping off the season against Villanova down there in Las Vegas, many as unknowns as Villanova has right now with Kevin Willard taking over as their head coach, you still have the Villanova Wildcats who have won a national title in the past 10 years on your schedule. You have the UConns of the world playing out there in Boston. It is not going to be easy for BYU to hide if they struggle this season. It's simple math is that you cannot hide. So I hope that Kevin Young doesn't try and tell his guys, hey, ignore the outside noise. But if I were him, I'd be telling him, embrace it. It may be hard to keep a level head with everything because it's going to be a lot of ups and downs. Let's be very clear. That's what's part of the deal here. But I think this BYU basketball team, they're here for it, and they want to embrace everything that comes with it. If you want to be considered a blue blood in basketball, you can't shy away from the mountain of expectations that are coming with this team. Will they ultimately accomplish them? Time will only tell. We'll see come early April next year. And that's crazy to think about, that we're in August right now. And we're talking about a team that all the way next April could be cutting down the nets if all goes well. But that's kind of where things are at with this BYU basketball team. I said it last week on this podcast, for those of you who are everydayers. I said that I'm having a hard time in my heart of hearts really kind of embracing the fact that BYU, yeah, they're on the short list of potential national title contenders. They've never been to a Final Four. I've got to get used to it. I think a number of you need to get used to it, but I also think that based on the hype and the expectation and the overall, like the feeling around this squad right now, I don't think that any of them are feeling any less bad about things than they were yesterday, 5 minutes ago, or even a year ago. This is a team. Kevin Young has been very clear that he knows what he's doing as a BYU basketball head coach. He always talked about the fact that I'm going to make this into something, and all he's done in a year plus time has proven that everything he said he was going to do, he's done. Now can he take them to the next level? And that is potentially going to a Final Four, and heck, maybe even winning a national title. And guys like Cameron Salerno, it's just more and more being added to the file on this BYU basketball team. And pretty soon we're going to find out if they're going to either be crushed by that weight or shoulder it and say, hey, we got this thing. All right, that's going to do it for today's edition of the show. As always, thank you for your support of the podcast. Cannot thank you guys enough for being with us. Oh, I should also mention before we go, congratulations. The official start, I guess the unofficial start of the BYU school year in sports happened over the weekend. Ellie Walbrook scored 2 goals in a return to action coming off an ACL tear to lead BYU women's soccer to a 2-0 win. Team Blue over Team White, if I recall correctly, down there at Southfield. They're back in action on Wednesday with another exhibition match. So it's crazy, folks. It's early August, but BYU Athletics is here. So, yeah, nonetheless, I wanted to make sure I get that plug in before we go on today's show. So, as always, once again, thank you for all of your support of the podcast. Thank you for making it in every part of your day, every single day. I'd like to call you guys everydayers who are with us every single day. And once again, a big thank you to everybody for being here with us on the Locked On Cougars podcast.